leave it to the director of Catholic Charities to actually legal services to answer this. But John, I haven't seen it, but somebody told me on our ALA listserv that somebody filed a lawsuit. I think it was on the East Coast. I'm not sure that there's a nationwide injunction, but it was a church that filed suit on this issue because churches and schools and hospitals and other sensitive location, like the sensitive locations memo that Hector was talking about before, has been rescinded or altered, modified. So I guess at this point, I mean, it depends on what parts of the church are considered public. And I think that like a client of mine who has a restaurant asked me this today, and he's like, "Can I just come into my restaurant?" And I said, "Well, I mean, there are certain public areas or kind of areas that are seem public, maybe all the way up to the register. But if you put a sign," and I remember an employment immigration attorney speaking in one of our, this is back in Trump 1.0, saying you should have signage saying, employees only beyond this point, or somehow delineating what's the public area and what's non-public. And then a person who's in charge that would then talk to ICE, and maybe it's the head priest, to say, I'm in charge here, or maybe it's the parish council president, but I'm in charge here. What's this about? Do you have a warrant to go beyond the public areas here? For example, maybe it's the church basement or something where people are seeking sanctuary or refuge. That's my quick take on that, but I don't know, John, have you been counseling any churches on this or anything else to add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think at this point that's all we can do is like trying to mark all the private spaces as private. However, we the only thing different is that you need to consider that if it's private for you think it only eyes, it has to be private for everyone, and it kind of follow. So it's not that you just mark things that are actually public and you're trying to pretend that it's private. So let's say the people to access the church, they don't need permission, right? It is a public space. But let's say that to enter the priest, residency or whatever, or sacristy, whatever it's called, you have to have some sort of like privacy there. So you need to mark that clearly that those spaces are private. I am really concerned mostly with the situation. I think something happened in a church recently where someone was sitting at church and he has a monitor, an on-call monitor, and his phone was ringing. And this was a small congregation, and the guy was being called by ICE, and ICE was outside in the parking lot, and he picked up the phone, and the monitor started beeping, and he had to get out, and he was arrested there outside of the church. So we are not sure if for real ICE will take the unless it's like an outrageous situation where people are like following someone to arrest, and that ended up like that person getting to the church. I don't see like I can't imagine that ICE will come into a service to arrest someone inside of the church. But that could happen. If that is what is the situation, I think John already explained that, someone needs to take the courage to ask for a warrant and to actually see it, and if and get from there. But it's a really difficult times when we're thinking that sacred spaces are going to be not safe anymore.
I had a
Well, that's what I'm basically asking, because I stand at the back of the church.
I had a question, but you can go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I stand in the back of the church. I'm a liturgical coordinator. So basically, they'd have to come through me to go into the service to arrest somebody. And I guess that's what I'm kind of saying is, because we're going to meet with our parish priest to figure out what do we do? How can we speak for or come in to be the mediator between what is happening if somebody comes during a service, and they say, we have a right to go in. Well, I just, it's the thought of it is just frightening, and I can't figure out how they would do it. But right now, there's nothing that to me would surprise me. Let's just put it that way.
I had 2 questions. Well, I'm gonna be at the same meeting tomorrow. And we also have a St. Vincent de Paul food pantry that's on the premises. But we and a number of other churches on the west side also have a faith cafe where we serve the poor and marginalized. I think it's like 2 times a week. Is that right, Mary?
Sundays, every Sunday, and the last Thursday of the month. So tomorrow, in fact, tomorrow I'm cooking at Faith Cafe. So yeah, that's another scary area. But Faith Cafe has a board, and the board has to decide how they're going to handle that. That's not going to be something but the pantry, our St. Vincent de Paul pantry, is something that's a discussion that we'll have in those areas. And basically what we're wondering is, would it help if we handed out the cards, that know your rights cards, or should we have flyers available? Those are all questions that we have. How much can the church provide as far as information wise?
Hector?
Yes, what I'm advising our clergy is, if you have mass going on, treat it like a sanctuary. And if a police officer came in and wanted to arrest somebody during services, you probably wouldn't let them. And you would do the same thing here. ICE came in and you would tell them, deny them access, make them violate you if you have to, because that's also evidence of a violation of civil rights. So unless they have a warrant with a person's name on it, no, deny them access. They need a warrant to get in, just like you would any other type of law enforcement. If they push it and they violate that, feel free to call 911 and call the police and say, ICE just showed up here. I denied them access. They barged in and they wouldn't show me the warrant, and get them to come and help. They will come and help. Oregon is a sanctuary state. They're not there to help. And so if immigration comes into a church or a school or whatever, feel free to call 911 and call a police officer to come. They'll separate what's right and what's wrong and what they can and cannot do. And they know the difference between an administrative warrant and a bench warrant, which they normally don't have to do the type of raid you're talking about.
Annabelle, what are your thoughts since you're with?
Yeah, so a couple things come to mind as I was just listening to what you guys were talking about. And I think what's primary for law enforcement, at least in Oregon, and what really saddens me to hear is that we do not want vulnerable community members to fall victim to crime. And as terrified as people are, we're scared that people will not call for help, and they're going to continue to be victims of crime and suffer in silence, essentially. And it's really, it's hard, in Oregon, whether it's a trooper, a sheriff's deputy, or a local police officer. Hector's right. We do not enforce immigration. As law enforcement in the state of Oregon, that is not our role. That is not our job. But with the inherent fear that has been magnified over the last couple weeks, we understand the hesitancy and the fear to call 911 and ask for help. Additionally to that, during I think John said Trump 1.0, There was a lot with having ICE clearly identify themselves, because there was a while that they weren't identifying themselves and people didn't know, is it ICE, is it police? And I don't know where we're at with that now, or if that even matters, if ICE is clearly identifying themselves, because we would like that delineation that local law enforcement is not here to enforce federal immigration. And yes, you can call us and we are going to help probably slow the situation down. And where it gets muddy for us, if there's a criminal arrest warrant, we have to act on it, right? If there's somebody, they're looking for a criminal, right? That is a public safety need. So we will arrest or help in that detaining of somebody if there's a criminal warrant out for somebody's arrest. If ICE is just picking people up for immigration, we have nothing to do with that. But once it becomes a public safety need, then we become involved. Yes.
Oops, you're muted, John.
I went to a presentation back in June, and they had like a diagram of all the players involved. And you had human rights people, you had, you know, faith-based, you had the businesses, you had the government, you had law enforcement like ICE, but then you had another group called vigilantes. And for me, just I'm starting to say, well, it could be where, hey, we are a sanctuary state. But what happens, Annabelle? You know, how was like the vigilantes, how to handle that? And Mary, that's something that could happen at any church parking lot type, you know, where they're just waiting. Because we have some really large Hispanic masses at our church, and I think at, yeah, you know, how do we handle that? Not just a single parish community, but as a larger parish, larger faith communities.
I think what we kind of preach at the sheriff's office, if you see something, say something, right? If you see suspicious activity, I mean, even especially, and I can only talk about Washington County, right? In Washington County, we respond to calls. So if you feel unsafe, see something suspicious, if you are at your church, in front of your congregation, in the parking lot, you see behavior that does not make you feel safe, feel free to call 911 or call non-emergency and report it.
We've had that, and
Yeah.
it has been really helpful. When somebody was during service, somebody in the parking lot was questionable, and so that is good. Is it all right for us to ask for identification, or if somebody comes in and I'm at the back of the church, the priest is at the altar, can I ask if they say we're here? Can I ask for identification of who you are? Show me that you are ICE, or that you are whoever you are, whoever they say they are.
I mean, you could ask. I mean, our employees always, law enforcement here, they can identify themselves. You can see their names, you can see their badge,
Right.
but I can't speak for what the federal agencies, if they are identifying themselves. I have no clue. I mean, you can ask. I don't know if they'll answer, but I know locally you'll see, whether it's Beaverton or Tiger, the deputies or the officers' names, the trooper names. So
Yeah.
But again, if you feel uncomfortable, right, I would call. If you see suspicious behavior, I would call. It is public safety. That is primary for law enforcement in Oregon, is public safety.
Thank you. So question again, do you think it would be wise to hand out know your rights cards or anything like that? Or is that something that is not useful?
I say it
My
is.
perspective.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
really
think
quick
it is.
on this
Mhm.
topic, I feel like things are changing so quickly that it's going to have to be very generic, or if not updated often. And then that's kind of where, I mean, listening to you all has been very interesting and fascinating, kind of hear the conversations that you're involved in. I'm honestly learning a lot too, but it seems to be fast moving. And that's, as we get invited from the sheriff's office to community presentations, I can give the information I know today. I don't know if it's going to be the same in a week. So that would be my only caveat with things.
Hector is having some questions or something. Sorry,
Yeah,
I'm not the moderator.
John, you mentioned something about the folks we have here in Washington County, and Annabelle,
I can't hear you.
I'm sure knows this, is we have Minutemen, they're packing, but they're U.S. citizens.
Right.
And they empower themselves to ask our people for identification, just like I. So they're here. We have plain old rednecks that are doing the same thing. So one of the things that Sheriff Pat Garrett did, met with ICE, the local regional guy, and they had an understanding. You show up, red lights, blue lights, flashing, identify yourselves on the vest, et cetera, et cetera. So if you Google the Molina case in Washington County a couple of years ago, went on the ACLU website, 5 police or agents supposedly showed up, unmarked vest, unmarked, packing a gun, parked in the middle of the street, no red lights, no yellow lights, no blue lights, demanding this person was going to be arrested. Turned out to be a U.S. citizen. And ACLU was there filming. We were all standing outside demanding, asking them if they were ICE. They wouldn't answer us. When they finally showed we forced them to show the warrant that they were looking for. And that's when they realized, oh, this picture is not the same guy. And one ICE tells the other person, the wrong guy, let's go. And they all took off, just like that. So, John, you're absolutely correct about, and Mary, you are too, asking for identification. Make them prove to you that they, in fact, are ICE. And that's the understanding that we in Washington County have with immigration, is that you must identify yourself in order to enjoy the protection of local law enforcement in supporting your actions. But if you come in here doing what they did with the Molina case, and again, you can Google it so you can see, and it's great training, by the way, for other folks that are doing this kind of work. Here's something went wrong, and it could have gone it could have gone deadly wrong, because those guys were packing. They had a gun, and they'll pull them out to enforce what they were doing. And they wouldn't let us in with the cameras, knowing that there was 5 of us filming, and actually making us, pushing us away, making us go away. And we threatened them to call 911, call police, and have them come if they don't identify themselves. And they refuse to identify themselves all the way through the whole scene. So if you Google it, you'll see the whole thing happen, and they never identified themselves. Clearly a violation of that gentleman's civil rights. And I don't know where the case is, but they were certainly going to file it. Bonavici came, Sheriff Pat Garrett came, and said this was unacceptable, and this is not what we want in our community. Creating an environment that could have gone wrong south real quick. Identification, yes, mandated, required.
Hector triggered another thought. We had a call today from somebody that was seeking an appointment. Somebody was picked up at their home, and I think ICE knocked on the door, and one of the children opened the door, and even without, this is according to what they said that instead of saying, "Can we come in?" they just put their foot in the door and then came in. And then they had a picture of somebody else who was not the guy that they ended up picking up. But I think they then asked, they said, "Do you have status?" And I think then he told the truth, and he was unfortunately picked up. But I think the lesson there is, without a warrant, I think people need to be really careful about whether they open the door or not, and they probably need to speak to their families about a protocol and making sure that they only open the door for people that they want to open the door for. And if there's a warrant, of course, it's a different story, but without a warrant, they don't have to open the door. So, but it was one lesson that happened today.
So that
or
happened
we
today?
learned. No, I
Going
think it
back
happened. I think it happened on the
Yeah.
weekend, but
Yeah,
today.
going back to the Mary questions about giving information to flyers and things like that. I think it's important for the community to understand. However, it can be really changing information, as Annabelle and everyone is saying. I think the basic about like know your rights, what to do, remain silent, do not open the door, put those stop doors, flyers in your own house, like, ask who is this, and if it's ICE or it says the police, ask who, who are looking for, show me the, show me the warrant and see if that's an actual judicial warrant or it's just an immigration officer signing that. Anyway, so all that information I think is key. However, you probably guys heard that Capricorn has been in the news nationwide because this attorney was giving information about know your rights and has been like taking us. We are helping to criminals. That's how it has been marked and. But regardless, I believe it's important for every human being to have this information handy. And more important, I will say these, Mary John and John, Kay, and everyone with the faith community is telling your parishioner this. You have to be careful with going to notarios, to people who are not attorneys, immigration attorneys, and attorneys in Oregon, particularly, because we're seeing stories of people calling attorneys over the internet, like, people desperate trying to do something, and they ended up paying hundreds of thousands of dollars and losing that money with the wrong hands and also the wrong advice. And instead of helping them, is dipping and is getting their cases more complicated and lying and things like that, that is going to hurt their cases instead of being helpful. So I will say these, you can definitely tell the community, hey, if you have a question about your immigration case, you need to consult with an attorney to get a plan. You have a potential case that you don't know. You have a potential relief if you are arrested. And this is what you should do in case 1A, B, and C, situation A, 1, B, and C. But you have to talk to an attorney or a credit rep and things that are truthful sources of information. That's a key. And education, of course.
Yeah, really good points, John. I think that the avoiding notarial fraud is in this Protect Your Family packet. This is put on by the Oregon Law Center. It also, those packets, there's a packet in English, packet in Spanish that I just put in the chat. Those also include temporary guardianship. This hopefully will just be peace of mind for folks, but it may be unfortunately necessary to appoint an adult as temporary guardian. The law in Oregon allows you to appoint another person for a 6-month period with just the stroke of a pen. It doesn't necessarily have to be notarized, but there's a document in there. There's also another document that delegates the parents' rights and responsibilities with regard to medical care. That packet also says, make sure you have important documents that you need, travel authorization. And so anyway, have a look at those. Those are good resources. Yeah, I think Hector has a comment.
You're muted, John.
What we're focusing on what we can do for the vulnerable community, but what can we do to make the case to the non-vulnerable communities? Those people who will say, oh, it's none of our business. It's none of our business. What's going on here? It's none of our business. I'm maybe getting a little bit too far, but I mean, like, none of our business. It's if ICE is going to take their gloves off, I think we need to take our gloves off when we're talking with our fellow parishioners or whatever, and just be upfront about it. Oh, Hector, you're moving. You may speak now.
Thank you, sir. I'm sorry I'm talking so much, but you can imagine how sensitive this subject is in my heart. Mary, for this year, is to go to different churches talking, and the council actually would pass a resolution declaring themselves sanctuary. And so that's something that you might consider taking a look at your parish and see if where they stand on that issue. We want to vote up or down on sanctuary status, and then you can come up with a policy of how you might treat some of these things. So one of the things that I live in a low-income apartment complex here in Hillsborough, and we already had a meeting in our little lounge area with the residents and said, if ICE shows up, what to do. And we had attorneys there present as well. The bottom line was this, and I wanted to share this with you because as an advocate, you guys that are dealing with people in cases, what I'm telling the residents here is get your paperwork in order. If the bank doesn't have both of your names on it, please get that corrected, because if they take one of you, the other one doesn't have access to the bank account. Get that squared away. Get your birth certificates, any legal papers of identification of the full family members. Get a folder, put it in there. Let the kids know who to call should something happen, or they come home and nobody's here, who to call, and do what John is talking about. Maybe appoint somebody in the family, a neighbor, whatever, a school teacher, a counselor, a priest, as temporary guardian should something happen. So yes, I am preparing them in case it does happen. Here's what's going to happen to you. And if you don't have these things in order, your spouse, the other half, is not going to have access. I'm talking about the car. Once the license expires, you can't renew it. The bank account, insurance, all those things. Get them in order. Get your paper in order. Put it in one folder because you're gonna need it. And do get phone numbers to your kids. And everybody has cell phones now. It's amazing. I see kids out here with cell phones, so they need to have a number of who to call should something go wrong. So yeah, we need to advise our community what to do in case it does happen. What's going to happen next? Yeah, and the rest of the family, and how do you notify each other?
It's one of the things that I read is not only to have a folder full of your paperwork, but take photos on your cell phone of the paperwork and make sure that everybody in the family has those the pictures on their phone so that they can go ahead and use it if they need to, if you're gone, if the person is gone. I have to share one thing. In 1970, when I went back to visit my grandparents in Yugoslavia, I had gone up to Germany to see my uncle and then came back, and they told me, your visa's used up. You can't, you're done for. And I said, no. It was just that my visa was written wrong. It was a 2, but in Yugoslavia, it was a 1 that was underlined. And so I went to the U.S. embassy, and they said, "Oops, sorry, can't help you. You want you to put your feet down in Yugoslavia. You're a Yugoslavian citizen." I had to go through, which was really scary. And they basically said, "You belong to us. You are not leaving. We can educate you. We can do this." And to go through, and that's why I can imagine what people are going through. It was the most frightening thing in the world. And I was 20 years old and a little on the stubborn side. And I said, my dad escaped, I will escape, and you're not going to keep me here. But what was scary is that they had all of my records. They had all my report cards. They had everything about me, every speech that I gave, because I had gone to Girls State and Girls Nation. And so I talked to the Rotary and a bunch of other things that I talked about peace and all of that. They had all of those things. That's what's really scary about what's happening now. I don't, what they're collecting, the information on everybody now is frightening to me. And now that you can do it through the cell phone and through other things where you don't even know the information that you have shared. So it is really frightening for everybody that is undocumented or documented. I have fears because even though I keep thinking, I'm an immigrant, they might say something messy and I'm off back to Croatia. But anyway, I feel that your paperwork, everything is so important that your whole family should have a record of all the things that you need. And now, fortunately, it can be on, a picture of it on our cell phones. So that's it.
Good.
I'm going to have to leave. So I really appreciated all the information that I gathered at this meeting. So thank you, all of you. Okay.
Thank you, Mary.
Yeah, Mary, before you leave, if you need any, further information for your parishioner, we have a bunch of, red cards with the Spanish, like know your right, like remain silent, and other know your rights information in Spanish and English. And we're happy to share those with you and via email or whatever you prefer.
Yeah, I deal quite a bit with Catholic Charities, Jen Tui and a couple other
cool.
people I've contacted, we've talked, so this was really helpful. I also picked up some information from clinic.org, the Catholic Legal
Network.
whatever. Yeah, and that, so I've got some of those too. So just as we meet tomorrow to discuss this, at least we have a beginning. So
that's great. Thank you for the job you do,
Thank you,
Mary.
Mary.
Thank you very much. Take care. Have a good evening, everybody.
You too. Thank you.
Bye.
So is there anything else that anybody wants to add? Any other questions?
Besides Hector, anybody else?
Oh, yeah, Hector, are you anybody else?
I'm anybody else. Actually, for the two Johns, the other two Johns, not you, John. John, you already know. So, two things that I wanted to just bring up. It's related, but we didn't talk about today. I was born in Matamoros, Tamaulipas, at the tip of Texas, across the border, Matamoros, and we were born there, my family. I was 2 years old when we migrated into Texas. We applied for a family visa in 1950. It's tough to get a family visa, and came into the United States. My understanding is that today a family that's applying, that line is now like 20, 25 years back. Applications from 1997. Folks don't understand that that's a problem with this broken immigration policy or system that we're operating under. So I wanted to mention that. The other thing I wanted to mention is when I became a U.S. citizen was 1976, centennial time. ICE decided they'd do a cute thing on my naturalized citizen thing and put like a little star, red, white, and blue, right dead center. Sort of a what do you call it, water drop background? Guess what? Nobody believed all these years. Nobody believed that my naturalized citizenship was real. They said no, they don't. That doesn't look like a citizenship. The DMV, when I went for my license, literally flipped my picture off of it, flipped it, because they said it was a fake ID. So I just want to share that with you. All because of a centennial, cute little water drop in the back, 100-year celebration, and people didn't believe that I was legal. So I want to share those two things with you. Is the long waiting line to process. I don't know where we are now. Do you guys know? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, yes, in fact, I met with somebody earlier today. It was a petition by a brother. This is from, we have these different categories of countries. Mexico, China, Philippines have the highest usage of the visa numbers, and so those categories are slower. But then even the other category also has its own waiting area, or waiting periods. So basically, yeah, if you're being petitioned, especially by a brother or sister that's a U.S. citizen, that is it's taking, I think you're right, 27 plus years, maybe 30 years. In fact, a former client created this site called myprioritydate.com, which is a pretty, I'll just put it in the chat, not that not that you have to look at it. Prioritydate.com. I spelled that right. And you can click on it and you can see that you'll put in the category. So if you put in F4, which is brother or sister of a U.S. citizen, and then you click on Mexico, it'll probably say it's too far out to calculate. But if you put other, it'll probably say it's 18 years out, something like that. So when people say, hey, people should go through the legal process, well, that means possible like banishment for the rest of their life, depending on their age. And the other part is, people do go through, everyone thinks that, Haitian immigrants in Springfield, Illinois were, illegal immigrants, but most of them came through a lawful port of entry, turned themselves into immigration, were given permission to be released from detention and apply for asylum, and they're put into the court process. And so many of the folks that we are working with are lawfully present and making valid applications. But yeah, the immigration system's broken. And I remember, this is back when I was chapter chair in 2013, 2014, there was a comprehensive immigration bill that passed the Senate, was just needing the Speaker of the House to put it in front of the House, and it was probably going to pass. Didn't pass, but it had all sorts of fixes to our immigration system. It had, evaluating people on kind of a little bit more of a point basis based on their education, their work experience, just trying to make the immigration process a little bit more smart and bringing the best and brightest to the United States and allowing for forgiveness for people who maybe committed a mistake, but have turned their life around. And John K., these types of waivers, I think they call it rehabilitation waivers in Canada, is exactly what the U.S. Proposal was modeled after. And it didn't pass, of course, or didn't make it to the House floor for a vote. But we're in dire need of immigration reform, and instead we keep kind of banging our heads against the wall and making changes, just patching up leaks here and there, and it's not solving the problem. So totally agree. We need comprehensive immigration reform, but right now the climate is, enforcement. But you never know. I tell people this, the last sort of big immigration, amnesty or legalization and reforms, they did come under a conservative president, came under Reagan era that, wanted to help out farmers and owners of properties and owners of businesses to have, people do the kind of work that other Americans didn't want to do. So maybe after this big wave of enforcement, there will be something that will benefit employers, but also benefit individuals. It just, I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure. That's me trying to look at a possible light at the end of the tunnel.
Okay, a question for the two Johns. What about, I was telling the story about the Venezuelans that helped me. Let's say they were you're under TPS, or the couple that was the people I accompanied, or guys from Venezuela, they got their cases extended, and hopefully they got their asylum paperwork in. But what potentially could happen to them now in the future? Because theirs was like maybe 1 or 2 years out to come back. Or
Yeah. Well, that's today's news, and gosh, I haven't read up on it. I know that it was TPS was terminated for Venezuela. I do believe people get to ride out the rest of their TPS. John, do you know it's not an automatic revocation of their existence?
Yeah, probably. I believe that what is happening is that they will let that to expire the day it will expire, and there's no get renewed. That's my thought. Many of these TPS Venezuelans are also in asylum seekers, and their cases in court might be well, if they have those cases already filed with court. I imagine they go with the court schedule, and but my biggest concern is anyone with some sort of like criminal background at all, anything, even like small infractions can be detained, and they might want to start detaining everyone for the which cases are pending in court until not release anybody on bonds or things like that, and just leave it detained while their cases they're waiting for the final result from the individual hearings or whatever. So I think that's kind of what could happen. I don't know, John, you think differently, but that's what I can imagine.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I'm just looking at I'll put it in the chat, the TPS page here. Sorry, there's a lot of stuff I put in the chat. Sorry, everybody, but
no, thank you, John.
Yeah, today's date.
What's TPS stand for?
Temporary protected status. Sorry, John.
No, good teamwork. I guess it was technically yesterday, vacating the January 17th, 2025 notice that extended TPS for Venezuela. So the TPS extension was basically, shut down. So it's gonna go back to whatever was last announced, which was October 2023. So I guess it just means no more extensions, but people that have TPS can ride out whatever they have, which it looks like October 2, 2026 was the last extension. They're just not going to go beyond that. I think I'm reading it right. Yeah. So, and I imagine we're going to see, so other countries with TPS, Haiti, Ukraine. I mean, I don't know. We're advising clients from Ukraine to just renew their TPS ASAP just in case it goes away.
Yeah, but, same with the Salvadorians as well. We should, Salvadorians.
What about the Afghans?
Afghans. That's a really interesting situation with Afghans. I think I don't know what is going to happen with the parole. This is going to be at all extended. And if the TPS, I haven't heard. I don't know when the TPS is going to expire, John. I don't remember on top of my head. But most of the Afghans are eligible for asylum, well, qualified to apply for asylum, and most of them, at least our clients, we know we have them apply for asylum, and other are coming or came on SAV visas, which is special immigrant visas. And instead of the people who are here, my concern is that those who are still remaining in Afghanistan, and you know, family reunification is the big deal, which is like something that we don't know if those with the stop of refugees coming to the country under the current policy. So we don't know what is going to happen with the
No.
Afghan that were coming as refugees instead of this evacuation allies operation, whatever was
Right.
how they evacuate them. So
So does anybody
Yeah,
have
it's,
anything to add?
yeah, every day.
No,
seems like
I find it.
Hector,
I find it interesting. We were just talking about the last conversation because of the Afghan refugees that we just got, what, 2 years ago, whatever it was?
right,
We got like over 500 families here in Oregon. And immigration just neutralized all their immigration status that made it hard for us to get any public assistance to them. They didn't qualify for housing. You know, we just couldn't get anything for them. So finally, things have started to settle down a little bit. So I hope they don't get that all disrupted again. You're muted.
So John K, I don't know if are you talking? Sorry, you're muted.
but Annabelle, did you have anything to, oh, you're coughing. Do you have anything to add?
No, thank you for inviting us, for allowing us to be here and be part of the conversation. And we're happy to engage in any way that we can. Like I'll reiterate what I stated in the beginning is we really don't want people to be victims of crime. And unfortunately, people will capitalize on what's happening and try to scam people out of money. And we can only encourage people to please let us know. If it doesn't seem right, call, ask. I mean, we have people scamming people all the time out of so much money. And we're happy to be involved in community conversations, especially as things continue to develop. Hopefully this isn't a one and done type of meeting.
Yeah, hopefully. And everyone, it's 8:09, and I know both the Johns have been working really hard. I'm assuming Hector's been working hard. I know Annabelle's not feeling well. So I think we can call it a day. Okay,
Sounds good. Well,
Can I do a
thank you.
quickie? Can I do a quick announcement?
sure.
For the other two Johns, Annabelle and I are blessed to be part of an organization called Building Bridges, if you haven't heard of it. Building Bridges of Understanding. We're in our ninth year? I think so. 9th annual. We do an annual symposium. We get all of top law enforcement at the table with community organizations and CBOs. And for the most part, the agenda is about hate crimes and biases and that kind of stuff. But we're quickly expanding. Last year, we took on homeless. That was a big topic that we need to deal with. So just wanted to let you know that that's alive and well. And if you all would be interested, get a hold of Annabelle or myself, and we'll make sure you get invited. We meet once a month, planning and getting ready for the one annual, usually in October. And it's a 6-hour face-to-face seminar. John joined us last year, and he really liked it. So just wanted to share that with you. Building Bridges of Understanding. You can Google it if you're interested in more information.
Oh,
Hector, is that with our friend what G?
Washington? Yeah.
Yeah, is that with the same? Yeah, with G?
Yes.
Yeah, I
Yes.
used to attend those back in the days, but at least the big event. Yeah, it's great. It's a big community.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're still meeting
And-
there at MET. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah, when is it happening? You said monthly?
We meet monthly to find out what it is we're going to bring on for the next symposium, and then we have a separate group that goes off and works on the agenda and the speakers and panelists, and then in October we present it to the community.
Gotcha. Great.
That's
Great.
great.
Oh, Annabelle?
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're still meeting there at MET.
Oh, okay.
That's great.
Annabelle, I want to thank you because when I
If
went there,
anybody needs it.
went to the meeting, I now have a police escort. Washington Sheriff's escort wherever I go. I think they're just in the parking lot.
Bye.
Hey, thanks everyone. It's a pleasure meeting you, most of you,
thanks,
but I'm
everyone.
happy to be part of this effort to continue the humanity. Okay, take care.
Take
Thank
care.
you guys. Appreciate
Bye
it.
now.
Bye,
Bye,
JJ.
thank you.
Bye.